How you doing? My name is Pitrelli and welcome to my first video. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of clinics in the last couple of years, and I do a lot of teaching, and one of the things I've run across is that a lot of younger guitar players still don't have an understanding of some of the vocabulary that's out there. What I'd like to do today is alleviate some of the misconceptions or myths about modes and arpeggios and that, and I'm not going to do another video just discussing that. I'd like to talk about what I call applied theory. What applied theory is taking some of these ideas, this musical mathematics, and putting it to good use on the instrument. Some of this may seem a little redundant for some of you, some of the players that are further along. Let me give the beginners an opportunity to catch up for you. One of the things, the most important scale, the most important element of rock guitar playing is something called the pentatonic scale. Now, the pentatonic scale, by definition, penta means 5, tonic tone, so it's a 5-note scale, affectionately called the blues scale. If you open up the book, the accompanying booklet with this video, you'll see some of my fingerings. This doesn't mean you have to commit to these. These are just the fingerings that I like to use a whole lot. Okay, we're going to concern ourselves in the key of A minor. Everything we do today is going to be in the key of A minor. Just this way we don't have to do 12 different scales. I show you one fingering, you learn it in that key. If you want to do another key, you just move to the appropriate fret. Anytime you run across a term that I talk about, or if there's a word or something that you're not sure of, don't continue through the tape. Feel free to rewind it and make sure you understand the vocabulary, because if you get lost, it's going to seem like a big mess later on. Anyway, let's talk about the pentatonic scale real quick. Again, my fingerings, real slow. We're going to do it in the 5th position. The first one will be... Now, Arlen warned me that I should do it real slow, so let's back that up again. Okay, anytime I give you one scale, I want to give it to you in 2 different spots. Okay, we're going to use an E string root, then we're going to do something that I call a secondary position, which I made that word up, it doesn't really matter. What it is going to be on the A string root. Same scale, 2 different areas of the neck. We want to cover as much ground as possible. We want to understand this fretboard so we can do a lot more things. So the secondary position, or my fingering for the pentatonic scale, beginning on the A string. When you're reading your tablature, make sure you start on the A string, otherwise it's going to sound awful. Okay, and here it is. And then if you want to resolve the scale, or if you just want to play the note. Okay, that is the basis of all again, my opinion, the basis of all good guitar playing. All music, with the exception of classical, come from the blues. Right? It stems from the blues. So if you have a good foundation in the blues vocabulary, you can branch off and do anything you want. Don't be afraid of going back and listening to guys like Stevie Ray. You know, you can go much further back than that, but I really like Stevie Ray because it's a much more modern approach to the blues. He's playing it very traditionally, but sonically it's a lot easier to listen to than some of the earlier recordings. By all means, feel free to go pay homage to Robert Johnson or those kind of guys. But what I love about Stevie Ray's playing, he did traditional blues, and he just brought it to a new level of excitement. Okay, let's incorporate a couple different sounds into that. One thing that I like to do is that still sounds fairly stock. Okay, you know, that works, but I would like to add some chromaticisms to it. Now, chromatic, by definition, is notes in a series of half steps. Now, this sounds real technical. I'm not going to bore everybody. Let's just get through this, and then we'll start making some music. Again, for the younger players, chromatic means notes in a series of half steps. Half step on the guitar is 1 fret apart. Okay, this would be a half step, half step. Okay, we're not going to play the whole scale with half steps. I just want to add some of the dirtier elements of the blues, intervals like the flat 5, so on and so forth. Again, I don't want to harp on the mathematics or the vocabulary too much, but listen to what it sounds like. Okay, the first 2 notes remain the same. I'm going to play that figure chromatically. Same thing. Now that may not look like a chromatic passage, but instead of playing that note there, I'm just going to move it to our original fingering. And then, now what I like about that is it adds a certain characteristic or a tone to the blues that's real important. I brought a keyboard with me here, just so you can hear, again, everything that I teach you, everything that we talk about, or whatever you learn from magazines, books, or school, wherever you may be, it's important to understand the vocabulary. It's more important is to make music with it, all right? So whatever you do when you're practicing, you want to sit down with the scales, you want to get your fingerings together, you want to develop good chops and all that. More importantly, you have to listen to these ideas in a musical context. So I'm going to just sit here on the piano. I have a patch here. I'm just going to play like an A chord of sort. Okay, the pentatonic scale is going to sound like this. Okay, very legit sounding. I'm going to add some of the chromaticisms of some of those half steps we spoke about. Okay. The third fingering for the pentatonic scale that I want to give you is, you see I'm moving out of position a little bit. Again, being a guitar player, you get stuck in a rut sometimes with learning fingerings, learning positions. All these rudiments are important, but some guys forget that you can break the rules and move out of pattern. You're not bound to any particular area on the guitar. You want to have the ability to move around and be creative. The last set of fingerings for this one, and then we're going to move on, is the same pentatonic scale. I'm just, what I call it, we're just going to move up in this kind of motion on the neck. Okay, I call it an extended pentatonic. The name doesn't matter as long as you get the gist of it. So instead of starting on the root or starting on the A, I'm just going to start below it. It's the same scale, same key. I'm just going to give you the notes underneath. And that's going to sound like this. okay? And again, with a musical background or a chord, this is what it could sound like. Again, my fingerings, my approach to it, you guys make music with it. And set up with a chord or a tape recorder, just get some sort of rhythm track happening so you could hear what these sounds sound like over chords. It doesn't matter if you sit in your room and you play 1,000,000 miles an hour and you play the scale. It's not music until it reacts over some sort of harmony, okay? So dig this. Okay, now that's with the keyboard. Keep in mind that the sounds, you can take this sound and play, you know, straight rock and roll. You know, that sounds cool. Don't be caught up with the velocity of something or how many notes I'm fitting in. I'm just going to show you how I approach it or how I apply these ideas. Okay. You also don't necessarily have to play fast all the time. It sounds real nice in a slow kind of fashion. Okay, if you want to add a little bit of a swing element to it, a lot of people get intimidated by the jazz vocabulary. They think they don't, you know, you have to study. Remember, all the notes are the same. There's only 12 notes in music. It's the combinations and your tone and different subtleties you can add to it that's going to make it sound legit, okay? I'm not a jazz player, but I can fake it decently. One idea is taking the same chromatic pentatonic scale and implying certain elements of a jazzier kind of sound. Something like... Okay, and all that is putting a certain amount of chromaticisms with the feel, the jazz feel, the swing feel, or the bluesy feel is more of the triplet. So the triplet, that little pivot right there. Now again, it would take forever to explain why I'm playing that choice of notes in those particular patterns. That doesn't matter. Understand that everything that I'm doing is built from those 3 pentatonic scales we just discussed. Now in your booklet you also have the secondary fingerings on the second 2 scales. I didn't show you those. Just consult the book, look at the tablature, and you'll be fine. Remember, there's 3 ways to practice your instrument. The first way is to sit down with the mathematics or the rudiments of music, as we call it. Okay? That means open the book, watch the video, whoever it may be, whatever kind of method book it may be, and you want to learn. You want to associate your instrument with what's written on paper. Okay? That's the mathematics of it. That doesn't mean you're making music. That means you're discussing new vocabulary. The second most important thing that you can do as an artist is, like we talked about, if you don't have the keyboard, if you just have a guitar and a little tape recorder, put down a rhythm pattern, put down something on tape that while you're practicing your scales, you can hear how they react over the chords. Everybody has this misconception that each mode has its own chord. Nonsense, okay? If you sit down and you put 2 chords on a cassette, just a little work tape, something for you to listen back to. Anything like that, it doesn't have to be involved. I prefer ballads because it'll give the note an opportunity to speak better, and you can listen to how the note's going to react with the harmony, okay? If all you do, if everything we discuss on this video today is played over just those 2 chords, an A minor to an F, that's all you have to worry about. So one thing, when you take a break from the video or after you're done watching and go back, put those chords on tape for 5 or 10 minutes. Everything we talk about today, everything we play is going to be played over those 2 chords, okay? Because you want to hear how the notes are going to react over the harmony. By harmony, again, I just mean the A minor chord, like simple. It could be anything you like, but keep it slow, okay? It's not an exercise in chops. It's an exercise in creating music, okay? The third most important part of your practice is listening. Okay, my favorite guitar players in the world are Jeff Beck, Gary Moore, I mean Steve Vai, Joe Satriani. I mean, there's a multitude of unbelievable players out there. You guys have available to you, you know, you can go buy a CD in the store. You know, when I grew up learning how to play the guitar, you know, I used to listen to the Allman Brothers and Aerosmith and those kind of bands. All we did was like listen to the tapes or listen to the records and try to pick up the riffs. The best teacher you can ever get is just buy a record by a great guitar player. Go get Van Halen too, get any of these records, get Gary Moore, Corridors of Power, or whatever you like. Whoever you want to emulate, whatever inspires you to play, listen to those guys. If you're at home, put it on. You don't have to necessarily play. Listen to the guitar player because his phrasings, his choice of melodies, his inflections will all come through when you're playing, okay? The other thing is if you're driving at this point, you know, drive around with a cassette of just a great guitar player, a great band, whatever you like, listen to it. You know, the more you listen to it, the more you're going to pick up from it. As you're studying out of a book, some of the scales we'll talk about, you'll start to recognize these sounds on the tape and you'll start associating the two. And it really starts snowballing after a while. Okay, keep those in mind. Everybody overlooks just listening to a great player. Okay, that's why we all get into this business, or why you want to play guitar, is you want to be like one of your heroes. Okay, when I was a kid, it was Jimmy Page or whoever you like now. Okay, everybody still gets intimidated by the modes. Understandably, you know, you have Ionian, Dorians, Phrygians, Lydians, all this crazy vocabulary. What we're going to do is try to alleviate all the confusion, and I'd like to just sit down and talk about what I consider my 4 primary modes. Okay, what I mean by primary is we're only going to talk about 4 of them today. I'll give you the definition of that later on after you actually can get the modes together. I have this piano here. It doesn't matter if you play piano, it doesn't matter if you read music. I just want to illustrate something for you. Okay, what we have here is the white keys. Okay, this is a C major scale, all right? Again, don't be worried about if you can play piano or not. Just recognize all I'm doing is playing white keys here. As you can tell, I am a virtuoso with one finger, so don't worry about it. Okay, if I tell you that this is a C major scale, the C major scale has a modal name. It's called the Ionian mode. That's all an Ionian mode is. It's a fancy name for a major scale. Where the confusion starts is when I say that the Aeolian mode is built from the 6th degree of a major scale. That's when everybody goes, uh-oh. Okay, watch this. Here's the C major scale, 2 octaves. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so between these 2 patterns, or these two notes, that's a 2 octave C major scale. What I want you to do with me is just look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I counted to the 6th note, or degree. We're going to refer to note of a scale as a degree of a scale. The 6th degree of that C major scale, again, starting on C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, starting on that note, that happens to be an A, okay? If I continue with all the white keys, remember, if I hit black keys, I'd be changing key, all right? I'm going to stay in this key. I'm going to play A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, okay? This scale is right in the middle of this C and this C, where I was before, okay? That is an A minor scale, okay? Its modal name is the Aeolian mode. Again, there's no difference between Aeolian and minor. It's just a fancy name for minor scale. Understand, I didn't change any of the values of these notes to make it a minor scale. I didn't hit any of the black keys. All I did was start on the 6th note of a major scale, play through A to A, and I said that's a minor scale. Okay, if you want to put the, if you want to rewind for a second, make sure you follow me to this point. Go ahead. If not, let's continue. Okay, a minor scale. So I changed none of the values of the notes. So in theory, aren't these 2 scales, they're using the same notes, aren't they basically the same? Yeah, okay. The spacings of half steps and whole steps and all the mathematics is a little different, but essentially it's all the white keys on the piano. So let's go back for a minute. We had those 2 chords on our tape. We had an A minor to an F chord, okay? Rewind that tape. What you want to do now is we talked about the pentatonic, okay? Let's talk about the minor scale, okay? This scale is going to work over those same 2 chords we had before, all right? Let's get some fingerings together. My fingerings, again, if you're comfortable with them, fine. If you're not comfortable with them, it doesn't matter, okay? This is just how I do it. You can use them, you can do what you want with them, but it'll go like this. A minor. I'm going to shift. Okay? Secondary position. Remember, what secondary position means is I'm just going to use it on the A string. I couldn't think of a better name, so that's what we'll refer to that as, okay? Same scale, different area of the neck, different position, different fingerings. Remember, when you're reading your tablature, don't start on the E string. It's going to be terrible. On the A string. Okay, that's a little different. Okay, as you can tell, I have no formal fingerings. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I know I'm going to annoy a lot of people by saying that. Again, make music. Don't worry about, you know, is this right? Am I play the guitar? Okay. Now, those same two chords, let's listen to the difference between the pentatonic scale. Is my pedal on? There we go. The pentatonic scale and the minor scale. All right. Again, same A chord, just so you guys have a reference point. Oops. Okay, the pentatonic scale sounded like this. Okay? The minor scale is going to have a little bit more of a weaving sound. It's going to sound a little more, I hate to use the word classical, but for now that'll be fine. Okay, you guys hear the difference? Again, the pentatonic scale, a little bluesier. Minor scale, a little more scaly. There's more notes in it. Now remember, you don't have to just play the minor scale, you don't have to just play the pentatonic scale. This is all information that's available to you to use in any way, shape, form, combination, it doesn't matter. If you like a blues tone, great. If you like more of the scaly passage, great. Whatever it may be, and please excuse all mistakes. Now, let's go back to the keyboard for one more minute. Since we said that the minor scale was derived from the major scale, and all those notes work over the chords that we talked about, if the minor scale is built from the major scale, couldn't we use the major scale in the same solo? Okay. We have an A minor chord and an F major chord on tape, hopefully by now somewhere. Okay, that's going to be an important tool, so let's do that when you get a chance. Or if you have a keyboard, you can do the same system we have here. If the minor scale is built from the major scale, and that works in our solo, if the minor scale has the same notes as the C major scale, and we understand that, can't we use the C major scale in the same solo? Not changing the chords. It's the same A minor chord on tape or on keyboard, or if you have a buddy with you jamming, he's going to play an A minor chord. Okay? You're going to use a C major scale. One of my favorite guitar players who did this, and it didn't sound regimented, it didn't sound like he was playing scales. It was Randy Rhoads. I mean, was one of the first guys that I recognized as a rock guitar player who was using elements of minors and majors and all that kind of stuff. If you listen to Crazy Train or anything off Blizzard of Oz or the, oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of the second album, Diary of a Madman, thank you. You know, Randy was unbelievable with that. Again, always try to listen to a guitar player who's using it in the musical situation. Gary Moore, again, you know, I'll keep bringing his name up, is one of my favorite guitar players because he's very musical. He's using a lot of scales, there's a lot of information, but it never sounds regimented, okay? Listen to who you like, which is more important. So what I'm going to do is play the same chord here on the keyboard. Just a minor chord. Keep in mind what the minor scale sounded like. That's a nice sound. Listen to the major scale. And I neglected to give you the fingering for that. Sorry about that. Go open, find it in the book. The C major scale fingering. 8th position. Okay? Again, let's get the chord up. Keep in mind also that when you're experimenting with these scales over this harmony, you don't necessarily have to play it as a scale, as a speed exercise. Use elements of it. Listen to this. Listen to the way the root of the A minor scale sounds over the A minor chord. That sounds nice. Listen to the way the root of the C major scale sounds over the A minor chord. That has a different sound, it's got a different tone, it should have different colorings to you, okay? Now, the problem that we get into is when we have to do this in several different keys. Okay, I want to show you a little shortcut. If you had to do this mathematics in every key, you may get a little bit frustrated. An easy way to do this is keep in mind two things. Excuse me. This was the root of the A minor scale. Again, don't be concerned if you can't keep up with some of the velocity, or if you're fast forwarding because you're getting bored with this part, fine. But keep in mind that here on the 5th fret was my root for the A minor scale, okay? My root for the C major scale was at the 8th position, or the 8th fret, all right? The distance between these two areas is 3 frets, 1, 2, 3. So if you think about it, if you're in a minor key, or if you're playing a minor chord, and you want to find the relative major, is how we're going to refer to these two situations. If you want to find the relative major for that key, you start with your minor root, count 3 frets up, 1, 2, 3, and play a major scale from there. Don't play a minor scale from there, that will be bad, okay? Again, 5th fret is our A minor scale, 3 frets up, 1, 2, 3, okay? Major scale. No matter what key you're in, okay? Let's say you're in the key of F sharp minor. Same idea. Remember, just because I gave you the fingerings for A minor, it's the same fingering, just started on the proper starting point, okay? F sharp minor. You want to find the relative major for that? 1, 2, 3. Okay? It doesn't matter if you know the name of that note or not. I suggest you learn it. You want to understand your instrument, but for now, okay, just remember, if here's minor, 3 frets up is a major pattern. All right, just to show you that it actually works. So if you ever listen to guitar players, and like Steve Vai, I mean, the guy's unbelievable. He's all over the neck. And you're like, oh my God, where do these notes come from? A lot of that is built off this kind of theory, put into a musical situation though. Keep in mind, don't practice your scales for 8 hours a day with a metronome. It really doesn't do you that much good. It gives you some good chops, but again, you want to be creative with it. You want to be musical. I like this method because it gives you a reference point to play over the top of. Okay? Let's move on. With that theory in mind, okay, we said that the minor was built from the major. Let's take that to the next step. Let's do it again. Let's look at the piano here for 1 minute. I'm not going to go crazy this time. You know, if you're a little confused, take time out, rewind the tape, consult with the booklet that's going to come with this video, and hopefully that'll explain it a little bit better. But for those guys who understand, let's move on. Again, same C major scale. Okay? Instead of starting on what we said, the 6th degree for the Aeolian mode, we're going to start on 1, 2, the 3rd degree. Same notes, no black keys, we're staying in the same key. Okay? E to E, in that key. This mode is called our Phrygian mode. Some of you may have heard of it already, some of you may understand it. Terrific. For those of you who didn't understand before, just like the Aeolian mode is a fancy name for the minor scale, it was built from the 6th degree of the major. The Phrygian mode is the same exact concept, except we're going to start on the 3rd note of the C major scale. Okay? So again, C. Okay, we're going to count out 1, 2, 3. Boom. E Phrygian. Now, it has a different sound, obviously, but it will work in the same key. Remember, a lot of musicians, a lot of players think that, okay, the Phrygian mode is good for this chord and the minor chord used for this chord. That's true in some cases. This is 2 chords that we have on tape, or again, the same A minor root that we're going to worry about, and I'm just giving you more vocabulary you can use over the same chords, okay? You want to just widen or broaden your melodic abilities, okay? And this is one way to do it, okay? What does the Phrygian mode look like? Okay, first of all, the fingerings, again, just my fingerings, do whichever you're comfortable with. In the 12th position, keep in mind, I'm not showing you some of the secondary fingerings. They're in your book, okay? And just always start them on the E string. I just want to cut to the chase. What does that sound like in a musical context? Well, let's do it again. Different sound. Okay, let's back up for a minute. Minor scale, keep in mind what that sounds like. Remember, it's a melody for now. Major scale had a little bit different of a sound. Phrygian is still going to work, but it's going to have a different sound. Okay. Again, all these modes, what they're doing is making you more proficient as a player, understanding, the areas of the neck you're allowed to use. That's cool, okay? Hopefully it's going to give you new melodic ideas. When I play a solo, if it's on somebody's record, if it's live, or whatever it may be, if that's what I have to solo over, sometimes my melody sounds nice starting on the root. Okay? Sometimes I want to go somewhere different. I'll think about, okay, what does the major sound like over that? Okay, that's okay. The Phrygian has even a different sound. So sometimes, you get into a rut and it's like, this makes no sense. I don't like the way this sounds. Try different degrees. Try the different modes. We didn't change the chords. Just see what it sounds like. Or not so many notes. Just because you start out in one area or you're starting out on one interval using one of the modes for melody, you never have to stay there. All this information is for you to do what you will with, throw it up in the air wherever it falls, enjoy it, try different combinations of them. Okay, just like before, we had the minor scale, and I said, okay, if you do it theoretically, we count up to this, you start with the major, you count to the 6th degree of the minor. That's all the mathematics of music, okay? It's more important to get this information on your instrument, okay? So you started with the minor, we counted 3 frets up to find the major for this key. Here was A. Start with A, count 3 frets up, 1, 2, 3. That gave us our C major starting point, which we said was the relative major for this key. So, to just repeat myself for a second, you have an A minor chord somewhere, we have an A minor scale, we can use the relative major over that same chord. Excellent. The Phrygian, let's find it the same way, okay? Here's the C major root, let's count 4 frets up this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives us the Phrygian starting point. With this, you really can't get in too much trouble unless you start playing the wrong pattern in the wrong spot, then it gets real ugly. So, one more time. Starting with the minor, keep in mind, we just want to find these scales on the instrument. You don't want to bog yourself down with the theory too much. It's more important to start making music. Starting with the minor in the 5th position, we count 1, 2, 3 frets. Play a major fingering right there. From the major root, count up 4 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's your Phrygian fingering. Okay, let's put these 3 together. So again, minor. 3 frets up, 1, 2, 3. Major pattern. 4 frets up from there. Phrygian pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you think about it, all these scales you're allowed to use over the harmony that we've discussed. If you're playing in your band or you jam with some friends and the song happens to be in A minor, terrific. You can use any one of these 3 scales, okay? You don't have to commit to these patterns. Since we started here with the minor, major, and Phrygian, we covered a fair amount of neck so far. Create your own fingerings that'll work through these patterns. Something maybe to this effect. Okay, don't worry about what I'm doing because I'm messing half of it up. But as long as you understand that you can move from scale to scale. okay? In any combination, in any shapes, however you want to do it, you do it. You be creative with it. This is just the mathematics I'm giving you. I want you to understand that you're supposed to make music with it. If you want to arpeggiate some of these things, we'll get into that a little bit later. If you want to play just in one pattern all night, great, as long as you're making music and you're happy, okay? Let's take this one more step, okay? There's one more mode that I consider the 4 primary modes, okay? We're going to talk about the Mixolydian. Let's use the same system we've been talking about all day. C major, okay. Minor started on the 6th degree. Phrygian, we said, started on the 3rd degree. Mixolydian, it's the same concept. It starts on the 5th degree of the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That gives us a G. From G, you go. That is the definition of a Mixolydian mode. It starts on the 5th degree of the major. So let's review for 1 second. Minor started on the 6th degree of the major. Phrygian started on the 3rd degree of the major. Mixolydian starts on the 5th degree of the major. Okay. As you can see, I never went near any of these black keys. We're talking about the distance between here, and we have a bunch of other scales. It's always using the same notes, but the notes happen to be in a different sequence. Subsequently, they are going to sound different over the same harmony. Don't get crazy with, I got to learn 1,000,000 chords and 1,000,000 scales for each chord. Worry about that later. For now, just to widen your vocabulary, over the same chords we've been talking about, we have 4 different modes plus the variations on the minor. We have the pentatonics and chromatic pentatonics. Okay, let's listen to what this sounds like over our sound. Okay, just backing up for a minute. You have the minor scale. The major scale. Phrygian mode. The Mixolydian mode. Let me give you the scale fingerings. 3rd position, starting on a G. Okay? What does it sound like? More important than anything else, minor again, major, Phrygian, Mixolydian. Excuse the tuning. Okay, it's a different sound. The most famous example that I could give you of this would be Eddie Van Halen when he went and did the song Mean Street. Okay, and he bent it a half step up to that G. Eddie, you know, you can never say enough about the guy. Okay, whether he was thinking about it in terms of theory or not didn't really matter. It was a killer sound. Okay, the way that sounds over an A minor chord. Just a different coloring. Okay, that's what I consider my 4 primary modes. Why do I call them primary modes? Okay, let's think about this for a minute. 9 times out of 10, you're usually in a major key or a minor key. Okay, so this is going to be a little mathematical for a minute, or a little bit of the theory side. Don't get scared by it, or if you're bored with it, sorry. But here's the triad for a C major chord. C, let's use a piano sound here. C, E, and G. That's the C major triad. Okay, the 3 notes of an A minor triad are A, C, and E. Okay, what I want you to think about is that if you combine both of those triads, you have C, E, and G, A, C, and E. That gives us 4 notes. If you think about that, that's the starting point for each one of the modes we've discussed today. A gave us the A minor, C gave us the C major, E gave us the Phrygian, G gave us the Mixolydian. Okay, why I call them primary modes is because each starting point for one of the modes comes from a chord tone. Again, the 3 chord tones for C major were these 3, 3 chord tones for A minor were these 3. All right? Every time you play one of those modes over these chords, it's always going to have a feeling of rest because it's part of the chord. Okay, there's some other modes that go into other sounds. We'll get into that at another time, but I want you to understand the concept of why I call them primary modes and why they actually work. You can play any one of these 4 scales in any combination, any way that you want, over the same harmony we've been talking about today. That's what's important, okay? Now, if you can play the scale, obviously we can use the arpeggio. Now, by definition, an arpeggio, the notes of a chord played in succession, okay? Which means if I play any chord I want, okay, and I want to arpeggiate the chord, in theory that's an arpeggio, which it is. Now, arpeggios get a little crazier when you start moving about the neck. Each one of these scales has an arpeggio. Let's discuss that for a minute. The minor scale, or the Aeolian mode as we called it, has an arpeggio. Obviously, it would be an A minor arpeggio. Let's listen to what that sounds like. Here was the A minor scale, what it sounded like. Here's what the A minor arpeggio will sound like over those chords, or this chord. Another minor arpeggio, same key, A minor, different octave. That's when you get some of the sweeping kind of sounds together. Now, keep in mind, we had 4 primaries. We're going to have 4 arpeggios. Let's talk about the C major arpeggio, same chord. Same chord, 3rd arpeggio with E Phrygian. There's really no such thing as a Phrygian arpeggio. Phrygian, by definition, is a minor scale with a flatted 2nd. Again, that's the mathematics of music, but the textbook definition of Phrygian is it's a minor scale with a flatted 2nd. So subsequently, E Phrygian would give us an E minor arpeggio, which we're going to be able to use over, again, the same A minor bed. Okay, a lot of these fingerings are moving around the neck. You have them notated in your booklet. Once you get comfortable, or once you recognize the sounds or the notes of these arpeggios, feel free, again, to play them where you want. Don't always commit to my fingerings or fingerings that you read in the book, whatever's comfortable for you, as long as it works well. The last one would be the Mixolydian mode. The arpeggio from that would be a major arpeggio. Again, there's no such thing really as a Mixolydian arpeggio. Mixolydian, by definition, just to talk about the mathematics of music, Mixolydian is a major scale with a flatted 7th. Okay, again, just the textbook definition. The arpeggio, again, would be a G major arpeggio over this chord. Okay, a lot of times you hear guitar players, like especially Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, I mean, unbelievable players, and they're playing arpeggios all over the place, and you're not really sure where they come from. A lot of it may have to do with this kind of situation. Let's combine some of these. Don't get caught up with the velocity of it. I just want to show you how I use these ideas, you know, my interpretation of it. You come up with your own, okay? I'll play them a little bit slower so you could follow it, but it's more important that you just hear it in context, and then you develop your chops at your own pace. So the minor arpeggio sounds cool. Okay, A minor, C major, E minor, G major. Again, please excuse all mistakes. Put them together, just an idea. Had told me to play everything slowly. I don't know what I just played, so I can't do it slowly. But as long as you understand that it's using elements of these 4 different arpeggios, which are derived from the 4 primary modes. Okay, keep in mind that everything we've talked about, all arpeggios, our modes, our pentatonics, all this information that we've discussed, is basically being played over 2 chords. or whatever you were going to use as a musical reference. If you were hanging out with a buddy of yours, a guitar player, and he's playing, you know, A, F, whatever the chords may be. If you had a keyboard and you like this method, if you use the tape recorder method, put some chords on tape, fine. But basically, everything we've discussed is over the same harmony. Remember, we never had to really change the harmony. It's not one chord, one mode, another chord. It's the same chords. If you're in a solo section in a song with your band, if you're writing a song, if you're trying to play along with something that you like, all this works in the same key and the same progression. What happens, though, is after a while you understand these scales, this approach to it, and then you say, okay, I got to learn more scales, more scales, more scales. Not necessarily. I'd like to just change everything for 1 second. What about if I tell you, play the same chord, play the same scales, the same modes, the same arpeggios, everything we discussed today. Don't change any of that, but let's just change the chord that you're playing it over. Okay, this is a concept that's real common with a lot of guitar players. It's known as a Lydian. Lydian mode is one thing. I call it the Lydian key. And if you're a fan of Steve Vai's or Joe Satriani's or players like that, you'll hear that they're playing stuff and sometimes it never really sounds resolved. Remember, the 4 primary modes all started on a chord tone of either an A minor chord or a C major chord in the key that we're doing it in. What I like to do is let's turn the harmony around for a minute. Okay, let's keep the same scales, let's keep the same arpeggios, let's keep the same approach, but just forget about the chords. Put down on your tape recorder, if you jam with a friend, or if you have a keyboard, whatever system you're using, let's just play an F chord for a minute. Not F major, not F minor, just, you know, F root 5, okay? Now, what this is going to do is this is what I'm going to call the Lydian key. The Lydian key means is that we solo in the key of A minor. Instead of playing it over those chords, we're going to use an F chord. Now, how do we find the Lydian key or the Lydian chord? First of all, by definition, Lydian is the 4th mode. The Lydian chord would also be the 4 chord. Back to our piano, 4 notes away from a C is an F. Okay, F would be the 4 chord on the guitar. Here it is right here. If you don't have this available to you, if you're not comfortable with that kind of theory yet, if you're in the key of C major, here's a C chord, the F would be directly under it. If you're in the key of A minor, your 4 chord again, well, excuse me, it would be 4 chord from major. If you're in the minor, it's 2 bar chords back. 1, 2. So that's a pretty common progression in rock and roll. Sometimes you have a minor chord, that kind of sound. Okay, that's going to be our Lydian chord in this particular key. What I want you to do is listen to what the same scales, the same arpeggios sound like, but now over what I call the Lydian key. Nothing ever sounds resolved, and it's got a really beautiful sound to it, different tones, and it's kind of eerie sounding because it never really resolves. Now, instead of an A chord, I'm going to use an F. Change my sound. An F chord, but remember, I'm going to solo just like I've been doing all day. Let's use an A minor scale over that chord. That sounds real nice, I think. Anyway, you decide. Same chord, I'm going to play more of the Phrygian tonality over that. If some of this sounds reminiscent of a Steve Vai or a Joe Satriani or any of those great guitar players, that's a lot of what they're using, okay? In some of their songs and some of their solos, the harmony changes. You don't always have to learn more and more scales and more arpeggios. Sometimes just what you have would be enough. if you turn the harmony around, okay? So just to recap that real quick, we used the same arpeggios and modes we've been talking about all day. Instead of playing it over an A, I'm just gonna move my root to an F, utilizing the same information we've talked about, and it just creates a much different kind of sound, all right? These are things, once you learn the rudiments of music, you're allowed to break the rules. You're allowed to do different things. There's a lot more rules that can be broken. What I want you to do is just understand what I did here. We're talking about two different sets of harmony. We had A minor on tape for a while, and that all sounded really nice. Remember, because the modes were built from those chords, it always sounded like it was at rest. When we moved it down to what I consider the Lydian key, it never really sounded like it rested. It always had a little bit of tension in there. That's the beauty of the Lydian sound. So check that out for a while. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for watching and putting up with me today. I'd like to leave you with a song from a record, an instrumental record I'm doing called the Mojo Brothers, which is myself, Joe Franco, and a buddy named T.M. Stevens. And the boys in the control room will roll tape. I'll see y'all next time, and practice hard and good luck. Take care.